Let's make some 1930s and 40s toddler dresses. Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin. I teach old-fashioned sewing skills on my channel, mostly for the 19th and occasionally the 20th century as well. I have been working through a series of getting as many baby clothes done as I can. While I am not pregnant, I am trying to get everything done so that when I do get pregnant, 9 months is not a lot of time to go through 4 centuries worth of clothing and sew it all, especially when at least a good portion of that is hand stitch only. So we're trying to get as much done as we can. So we have actually gone through all of 20th century baby stuff, underpinnings, all of that is done. We're on to toddler wear. So we're starting with the 1930s and 40s. I have here a gingham plaid that made an apron from not too long ago. And then I have some reproduction prints. This one I thought was cute. And a little pink one as well. So we're going to make size 18 months, 24 months, and then more or less like 28 months, 30 months, somewhere in there. So yeah, 1.5, 2, and then 2.5 essentially. How many yards do I have of these? 2 yards, okay. I'm hoping I can save a little bit, maybe we can make another set of dresses and have 2 outfits in these 2 yards. We're going to find out. I am using an original pattern. I found it on Commercial Pattern Archive, which if you're not familiar with that is, it is literally a giant website full of vintage patterns that you can download for free. You do have to size them up. They are just images. But if you're accustomed to grading patterns, it's a great free resource. They have stuff all the way from the 1840s all the way up, I think, to the 1980s. But yeah, again, you do have to grade them up to size. Alright, I'm cutting out the first size, which is the largest size, as we discussed. This pattern does not have seam allowance. I am trying to make sure that I add seam allowance. I'm really, really bad about that, but I am attempting to add seam allowance as I go, including a hem, which is going to be about 1 3/4 inches, it looks like. It's a decent size. And yeah, I eyeball seam allowance. Sometimes I call my sewing videos Chaos Sewing with Caitlin because I feel like that's a very good descriptor. I don't know if what's left over is going to be enough for a whole outfit. It will be enough, say, if I wanted to do a small hat, a couple of small hats, or maybe some other type of outerwear. I'm not entirely sure. It could be a lining for a coat even, but there is going to be fabric left, so that makes me happy. Also, yes, you will probably hear chirping in the background this entire video. Last month we got chicks. This month we got guineas. Video footage of the guineas at the end of the video. And then we get to start with the sewing. I think I'm going to use my great-grandmother's machine, which is 1907. I do have a hand crank that's 1938-39, somewhere in there. But I don't know if I want to do this on hand crank. That sounds like a lot of work. So I think we're going to do the treadle. Alright, so step number 1 is going to sew this front part, which has a little yoke to it, to the side fronts. So you have the yoke portion going down here. I think it would look really nice with trim across here as well. I'm going to look. Let me see what the original has, big trim. And there was a ruffle you could put on, which I didn't do. And the ruffle also is very mid 1930s, and I'm trying to make this a little bit more versatile than that. So I could have finished these seams with French seams, and I just thought I'm going to leave them raw because I've seen that on some originals, and so we're going to do that. Now the back yoke is going to get sewn in to the back bodice. And then this back can get sewn to the front, and we'll essentially have a actual bodice. So here's the pink one, and again, front, I have the back pinned to the front. We're going to sew it at the side seams and also at the shoulder seams. Now we're going to sew the back, center back together. So I want to leave a little bit so we can get the dress on and off. So maybe about that much. Now I was going to line the entire yoke, but I decided I have this bias strip, so we're going to go ahead and just bind it. Alright, so I put together the sleeve, and all that entails just sewing it here, putting a gathering thread, and I am putting on the cuff just by whipping this down. Then on the neckline, we put that binding on. I'm just whipping this binding down. And now that we're done with the sleeves, we can stitch those right in. Alright, this is the third time I've attempted to set sleeves on this particular bodice. The first time I did it, I didn't have any bobbin thread whatsoever. The second time, I broke a needle, so we're going to try this again. I've decided to trim them all the exact same way. I'm using Rick Rack. So I just have this vintage. It's supposed to be 100% cotton. I don't know if it is, but this is the 1940s. We have synthetics. So we're gonna put this on. I've just been doing it just right across the seam from front, around the, or from back all the way down to the front, down to the hem. Very basic. All one seam. Makes it a little bit easier. And ideally I would have done this before doing the hem, but I didn't think about it. So I'm just tucking it under and hoping it works. So we have like a cute little trim. So there's a cute little trim dress. I think it just hides the seam, which is especially nice on that plaid because it's very obvious where the seam doesn't match or the plaid doesn't match. And then I'm going to finish up the back. This is the opening. I ran out of bobbin thread again. So close, I only have one more little seam to do. Darn it. Alright, the very last step will be putting buttons and well, not buttonholes, we're doing button loops. because I like them better than buttonholes, even though it's essentially the exact same stitch. I'm using little vintage mother of pearl buttons on all three. I'm using some thicker cotton thread for all of the sewing of this. Do it like this, and I'm going to pull a loop and just make sure it can go over the button. You want to make sure it's plenty big for that. Then I'll hold it in place with my thumb and index finger on my left side, because I'm right-handed. And then with my right hand, I'm going to do a buttonhole stitch. So that's making a loop, putting the needle through the button loop, pulling it through the loop you just made, oops, so that ties a little knot. And typically I do this in buttonhole silk, but could I find my white buttonhole silk? Nope. I found the black stuff, but I didn't think that was going to look good, so this is the thicker thread that I could find, or this is the thickest thread I could find. But yeah, you just keep going around. Again, it's basically a buttonhole, so you don't want to cut anything. And for some reason, they always turn out better when I do this. They look better. Okay, when we're done, put your needle back through and pull it, and that kind of makes it nice and sturdy. And then I can tie this off, and that's how I do a button loop. And you can use them, you can make bars of this for hooks to hook onto. Instead of using like hooks and eyes, you could do hooks and then the thread bars. That's totally an option too. I've seen that. I know I have original 1850 dresses with thread bars, and 1860s as well. So I know it dates at least to then. I don't know if it's any earlier than that. I want to say that one of the 1830s dresses I examined had thread bars as well, but I have to go back and look at pictures. But yeah, you can also do it for buttonholes. And so yeah, those are some nice little button loops, but we are done. We can go ahead and put them on hangers, and I will show you what they look like. Alright, there we are. So they are done. I do think the smallest one looks the best. I don't know if it's the proportions or just that the fact that all small things are cute. Maybe it's the pattern, because I do think I like the fabric on that one the best. But yeah, I think they turned out well. The portions should be all the same, because I didn't measure them up by proportions, but it does look very large. Maybe that's just the way it's laying on the hanger. And we'll find out when that time comes, and figure out whether it needs to be adjusted or not. I do think adding the rickrack was a really good choice, because it added some sort of detail to it. I would have liked to have maybe had some lace or something for another one, and then you could have done the ruffle on the third to have them all different, but having them all the same really streamlined the process in terms of sewing and making it really easy to finish. So sometimes trimming them all the same is a good thing. But I am glad that they're done. It's another project off my list, which is great. I always enjoy crossing projects off the list. And we're doing pretty well as far as getting the 20th century baby stuff done. It's not taking me as long as the 19th century stuff does. Now granted, part of that is because we do a lot fewer decades in the 20th century than we do in the 19th century. And that probably has something to do with it. But I feel like we're cruising right along and don't have all that much more to do. I mean, yes, we'll have to do outerwear. We do at some point need to do toddler underpinning.